Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Asani Kayatano.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
Today is May 30th. The end
March.
of the month. March. Oh, wow.
It
March
does feel
30th.
like we're speeding forward, but we're going to jump right into our weather update for today. We have Francisca Wellington on the line. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Francisca. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How about you?
Not too bad. Weather has been more March-like, I gotta say. At least we have our winds, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So what are we expecting today?
Okay, we'll continue to see warm conditions. I would say mostly dry. That is because we'll be seeing isolated showers today.
Okay.
Winds will be out of the east, 10 to 20 knots, and that will produce moderate seas.
Okay.
In terms of our temperatures, 86 along the coast this afternoon, 81 up in the Maya Mountains, 92 inland, and overnight temperatures, 81 along the coast, 72 inland, 68 up in the Maya Mountains.
Okay, and the extended forecast.
Okay, Tuesday night, we'll be seeing a decrease in shower activities, so it will be warm and dry, and I'm seeing that for the rest of the week.
Okay, so not much changes.
Not much changes.
All right. Very straightforward. And of course, I know you have your fire update for people who may be tempted to, whether it is burn their fields or whatever else they might be burning.
That's right. And that is saying that the forest fire risk remains very high.
Yeah. I would expect that with so much wind right now.
Yes, and the dry conditions too, yes.
Okay. Well, we hope that people pay attention to that warning.
I do hope so.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that update.
You're welcome.
You have a great day today.
Thanks. Same to you.
Okay. And there you have it. Another warm day ahead. We do have some winds, so since a lot of people are at home, open up the house so you can stay cool.
Ventilated.
And
Ventilated,
keep it ventilated. And there is the possibility of an isolated shower. All right, we're going to keep things moving now into our eye opener for today, and our eye opener taken from dailyom.com goes like this. Love exists to be expressed, not withheld. It's easy to take our feelings for granted and to assume that the people we care about know how we feel about them. But while those we love are often quite cognizant of our feelings, saying I love you is a gift we should give to our loved ones whenever we can. Letting people know you love them is an important part of nurturing any kind of loving relationship. Few people tire of being told they are loved, and saying I love you can make a world of difference in someone's life. Take a relationship to a new level or reaffirm and strengthen a steady bond. Everyone needs to hear the words I love you. 3 simple words. I love you. When you declare your love for someone, you admit to them that you care for them in the most significant way. Saying I love you is a gift of the heart sent directly via words to the heart of the recipient. Even though it may not always look that way, love from the heart is an offering that is always unconditional and given without strings attached. That is the true essence of the gift of I love you. I see a guilty face over there, Sani.
It's because I have always been taught by my parents that love, I love you, is more of an action than it is merely a verbal expression.
Yeah.
However, constantly telling someone that you love them, doesn't matter if it's your spouse or if it's your children, your siblings, whomever.
Yeah.
Constantly reminding that person serves as a sort of positive enforcement.
Yeah.
That they know that they are appreciated, that they are loved, and that kind of thing. Going to the eye opener, however, being able to express that feeling for someone else
Yeah.
means that you have within yourself already accepted how
Yeah.
you feel towards that individual, right? And so being expressive about it allows that person to actually feel as if though they have a purpose in your life as well.
Yeah.
And going back to what my mom has always said, it's more of an action thing than it is
Yeah.
just saying it. You have to
Yeah,
be
you
able
can't
to
say
show
it
it.
without doing what is required, which is
Yeah.
basically just having, being thoughtful, being respectful, sometimes taking additional actions that's going to help to show that you really do care about a person.
Yeah.
Appreciation goes a long way. But what I think happens though sometimes is that we neglect to say the words every now and again. You
Yeah.
don't have to bombard somebody with it. And for me, I think that's what I think the eye opener is about. This is such a great time, especially where people should be separated. I know quite a few people in my own circle that maybe haven't seen their parents or haven't visited particular loved ones because they're high risk. It's a great time to kind of use the communication tools that we do have
Yeah.
to say these very words, to give reassurances through the verbal messaging that we
Yeah.
use. And so, yeah, you can do all the actions, and it all depends on love language, which is a whole other conversation. But don't forget to say the words every now and again. It's important too.
Goes a long way.
All right, but of course we're keeping things moving. It is a big morning, and I don't want to let people lose the fact that we have just had a confirmation last night, late last night, of our third case of COVID-19 in the country. And of course, it's Sunday, there's a lot to update on, so we're going to shift to Eye on the News.
All right, so this Monday morning is eerily reminiscent of last Monday morning when we sat on this very couch, and amidst all of what we were discussing with the measures being taken in respect of COVID-19, there was our first confirmation.
Yeah.
So today we are announcing the third such case of COVID-19 in Belize. This case is in mainland, in Belize City. And so I think it is fair to assume that it changes the game plan in a manner of speaking.
Yes.
Whereas measures were taken swiftly to contain the situation in San Pedro, it being on mainland this time around, we'll see what measures will be put into place immediately to attempt to mitigate the spread of this virus. I know that last night, the Director of Health Services, Dr. Marvin Manzanero, issued a video statement in which he announced this third case. I believe we have it, and I would want to go to it at this point.
So we have the video of Dr. Manzanero, who is the Director of Health Services. He made the announcement, I believe it was after 10, near 11 last night, via the Government of Belize Press Office Facebook page. So let's look at that message now.
The Ministry of Health is tonight confirming its third case of COVID-19. 9 samples were screened today. One of those samples has turned out to be positive for COVID-19. That sample is from a male person who has a travel history to the US, who arrived in country on March 20th. The patient has been asymptomatic for the most part, but developed mild signs and symptoms on March 25th. The patient was swabbed on March 27th, and today the screening and confirmatory tests have confirmed that he is positive for COVID-19. That patient remains in self-isolation, and the Ministry of Health surveillance team has been activated and alerted to start conducting their mapping exercise. The male remains virtually asymptomatic, and once we have further details, we will be passing those as may be needed.
So we know that Prime Minister Dean Barrow will issue a statement today. We are of the impression that it will be perhaps in the form of a press briefing, as he did last Monday. However, the details of how that information from him will be shared with the public is tentative.
Yeah.
Right? What I want to do at the moment, Marlene, is to go back to some of the releases that came from government over the weekend regarding additional measures. I guess this was prior to this announcement last night, insofar as the quarantine order, right? And I want to read verbatim. It's fairly lengthy, but I just want to do so to be able to properly inform our viewing audience. It says here, this was issued yesterday, Sunday, March 29th, yesterday afternoon. Due to the continued and increased threat of COVID-19 to Belize and the rising death toll worldwide, the government of Belize is concerned that persons continue to disregard self-quarantine measures encouraged by the Ministry of Health. This endangers the lives of all Belizeans. The security forces and health services are already making every effort to ensure the safety of all. However, persons continue to act irresponsibly by entering Belize via blind spots and legal ports of entry, which is dangerous and unsafe and poses an imminent threat to all those in Belize. The government now finds it necessary to enforce additional quarantine measures and has amended the quarantine order to include that, effective immediately, any Belizean entering Belize from any country through any official port of entry or caught attempting to enter via any blind spot will be placed in a mandatory quarantine center designated by the Quarantine Authority of Belize. Persons will be placed into quarantine at their own cost, which may be up to $110 per day for accommodation and 3 meals. The Quarantine Authority will, at its discretion and in line with the guidelines of the Ministry of Health, determine the length of stay in the quarantine center. Belizeans are reminded that any person who develops flu-like symptoms and who suspects that they may have had contact with someone who has traveled from a country affected by COVID-19 must immediately inform the Ministry of Health. And the amendment to this is, it says, pursuant to the Immigration Act and based on the advice given by the Quarantine Authority under the revised quarantine order, the Ministry of Immigration hereby invokes its own authority to refuse entry to all non-Belizeans into Belize. All right, so that's the gist of the latest order given by the government of Belize. And I brought this up, Marlene, because over the weekend, several persons had been passing on information that there were others who were entering the country via these unofficial entry points, so to speak. And in line with that, over the weekend as well, an attorney, a well-known attorney, was charged for disseminating false information. All right, and attorney Arthur Saldivar was arrested and charged in Belmopan, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, for having made a social media post that turned out to be inaccurate, right? And in the latter part of last week, we had reported the first such case where an individual had also been arrested and charged for propagating false information in respect of COVID-19. So we take the opportunity to remind persons in the social media realm that they must be responsible. We don't want to create any further situation where there's undue panic or what have you. So you need to be very, very responsible on how you comment and how you share information regarding this disease.
And also how you consume it as well, because I think that that's a part of the concern. You know, Saldivar's post was speaking of Belizeans, including a non-Belizean, entering through the northern border from Los Angeles. And whatever was in that particular post, something was inaccurate or the entire thing was inaccurate, and therefore he was charged for spreading misinformation. Now, we've been told by the Attorney General, by the Commissioner of Police, and by the Prime Minister very clearly from the onset or since things have heightened with the pandemic, that they would aggressively go after persons who were spreading misinformation. And as you rightly noted, last week we saw our first charge. And I think that that's where we have to be aware that there are people out there who may gather tidbits of information and put it out for whatever motive they may have. They may genuinely believe it, they may genuinely trust their sources, but if they spread something that's not true, then they're culpable of being charged, and that's what we saw here. What I think is important as people who are on social media, because I see where people are jumping up and kind of defending, you can't just read something and assume that it's 100% true. If your neighbor jumps up and says, you know, the other household has 5 persons with COVID, you can't just read it and say because they said it, it's true. You wouldn't trust it in other circumstances. So this is perhaps a time where you need to be you have to be more critical in the information that you are digesting. You have a responsibility as well, but the greater responsibility lies on the person who puts out that information. Because you're right, we're looking at inciting panic. People are really, really anxiety ridden, and it's kind of like these peaks nonstop. Somebody says something and then it's, you know, we're all in a flurry all over again. And I get it. It can be a very concerning time, but we also have to be sure that we don't lose our capacity to use our logic as well. Common sense, as we would say, and just say, well, how much am I going to believe everything that I see posted online or sent in WhatsApp?
Marlene, is that when we go the way of the rumor mill, we undermine all the efforts being taken by the government to be as transparent and as clear with us in so far as how they go about issuing information. And fair is fair, they've done quite a stellar job thus far in terms of keeping us abreast of what has been happening. You pointed out, albeit beneath your breath earlier, that Dr. Manzanero looked fatigued. But he's going the length
Ministry of Health
to be
team
able
has
to
been working for a long time. And I think we think that it's just press conferences. It's not. There's a lot of groundwork that has to happen.
A lot of things happening behind the scenes, right? So that when people knowingly put out false information, it goes against everything that is being done in an attempt to inform us in a due manner and in as responsible a manner as possible. Now, I just want to go back a bit to the actual police report regarding the situation involving Mr. Saldivar. It says here that on Saturday, March 28th, 2020, a post on the social media Facebook under the name Arthur Saldivar posted that some persons were coming from Los Angeles and are being facilitated entrance through the northern border. He also called out the media to go to the border. As a result, other social media users started posting and sharing the said post on social media, which tended to create a public alarm. As a result of police investigation, Arthur Saldivar was formally arrested and charged for spreading of false news. Now, this has created a situation as well, Marlene, where, in my opinion, I have noticed a lot of people wanting to speak authoritatively on this matter when they are in no expert capacity to be able to do so. And we're seeing lawyers as well jumping in the fray, wanting to be able to speak from the point of view of someone who is learned in this particular area. And admittedly, none of us are. We do read, we follow things that are happening insofar as COVID-19 in other parts of the world, but that does not make us the local authority on what happens here. We leave that to Dr. Manzanero and his team as the persons who are trained in epidemiology and that sort of stuff, right? So this morning's Eye on the News is dedicated primarily to bringing an update to our viewers ahead of the Prime Minister issuing a formal statement later today in respect of what new measures will be put in place for Belize City. Now, just as an observation, Marlene, I was moving around the city over the weekend, and it was a virtual ghost town. It was dead, L-U-L-L, right? Lol. And now with these new measures to be taken, to being brought into effect perhaps today, later today, or going forward in Belize City, expect that there will be some form of clamp down on movements in the city?
You know, I think there are pockets where there are activity taking place, and in fact, I do want to point out that the police department also issued a press release reminding people of the social distancing measures.
Yeah, there were several arrests in respect of that, actually.
And so I visited a few. I went to the gas station. The gas attendant told me, you know, I have to collect from this far away. You know, they told me about the police checking in to ensure that they're doing social distancing. I saw a few places where people, they weren't crowded together, but clearly not respecting the social distancing. So we know that the police continues to go out and do that surveillance to ensure that people, because they've also placed the responsibility on store owners here too.
Yeah.
So we personally, as customers, need to be able to remember social distancing for ourselves. But I know that the last order that went out also spoke of store owners or business owners really ensuring that they have properly marked areas that people know where to stand to space themselves out accordingly. So the police did make arrests for that. Gatherings should not be above 10 persons. It's not a time to be having a party. It's not a collective vacation. It is the opportunity for us to stay in our homes and to minimize the potential spread of the disease. We don't know who has it. We don't know who's come in contact with anyone who's had it. And I think that's just a message that we have to keep on saying to people. The unique thing
Apart
about
from the hygiene measures.
COVID-19, the unique thing about COVID-19 is that we know, and there's a lot we don't know, but what we do know is that some people can have it and show mild symptoms or barely any symptoms or no symptoms, so they can have it and be transmitting it. So we have to be mindful of the fact that, you know, I think the general advice internationally from health experts is just act like you have it. Not act like the other person have it, act like each one of us have it and that we're protecting each other or we're preventing the spread. Because that's the only way you can really be able to function in not having a mass spread of the disease very quickly, which is what we're seeing devastating other parts of the world.
And as you've mentioned, Marlene, it is regrettable that this individual who is the third victim of COVID-19 arrived from New York, which is the epicenter of COVID-19 in the United States. And as we've been following along as well, the United States has since surpassed China
and
Italy insofar as the number of cases being confirmed stateside, right? So we're hoping that, you know, whatever is put in place going forward is effective in at least mitigating and containing any spread.
Yeah, and I do want to say that because I think the final part of the press release last night said that the Prime Minister is going to give a public announcement. We don't know if that'll be recorded or a press brief as yet. We haven't gotten a time as yet, but that he would talk about new preventative measures. So we're expecting to find out exactly what that means, what type of limitations will be put in place to be able to prevent the spread.
So to conclude our Eye on the News this morning, I just want to make a humble public appeal for all Belizeans to be able to continue with their hygiene practices. It is here now. We knew that it was imminent, but you need to do your part insofar as being able to constantly wash your hands, disinfect areas that surfaces that may have been contaminated or what have you. The onus is on you. So with that, we conclude our Eye on the News this morning.
That's right. And of course, very quickly, we do have our COVID-19 update for today. Quite a bit of it was discussed in Eye on the News, but just as to reiterate, our COVID-19 update, the latest report is that nine tests were done from across the country, and one returned positive, bringing the total number of cases to 3. The patient is a 38-year-old Belizean male with a travel history to New York. What's most interesting about this case is that he returned to Belize on the 20th, but in
just
fact,
before the airport was closed.
The closure of the airport. And we do know that New York was already seeing a high spike in the number of cases around that time. He says he was self-isolating didn't experience symptoms until the 25th, got tested on the 27th, and the confirmatory tests came back yesterday on the 29th. So we're talking about 9 days. And I think the biggest question will have to be is, did he self-isolate as he said he did? And I know some responsible people who are self-isolating, so I know it's not impossible, but I really do hope that this particular patient was self-isolating and not taking it lightly. We saw with the index patient where she did at first say that she was self-isolating, and as
Her
the
mother
mapping
ended up contracting.
as the mapping indicated, she was not self-isolating as is being dictated by the Ministry of Health. So those are questions we're going to get answers for today as well, and that's our COVID-19 update for this morning. Right, we're going to get moving into our show for today, and we have a lot more information that's going to help us to understand. There's so many different dimensions of what's taking place right now. We know the most critical part is looking at the health issue. How do we stop the spread? What do we need to do? What do we need to be cognizant of about the virus? And that's going to be the first part of our show.
The second part of our show this morning is a human interest feature, where self-isolating is the topic.
Yes.
Insofar as COVID-19 prevention.
That's right. We're going to talk to someone who is self-isolating after returning to the country, what the experience is like, and how seriously they're taking it. And then the financial repercussions. We know and we've heard the stories, and many will say this is just the beginning of the financial implications that will come from this pandemic. So we're going to have a conversation with representatives of the Chamber of Commerce to find out what their members are saying and what their thoughts are on what's happening at the moment. So we have a packed show lined up. We're going to go ahead and take that first break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Dr. Fernando Cuellar to talk about staying safe in the pandemic. So please stay tuned.
The Belize Bank
And we're back, and we're getting ready to move into our first conversation for today. As we mentioned, we are trying to stay up to date, getting all the information that we can, providing it to you in preparing and keeping safe as we all watch the pandemic as it spreads globally. We're joined by Dr. Fernando Cuellar, who's an internist at Belize Medical Associates, and we're here to talk about a lot of things, COVID-19. But good morning, and thank you for being here.
Good morning, Marlene. Good morning, Armin, and thanks for the invitation. I feel like I'm home when I come here. My third home. After medical
You know,
and home.
it's a really critical time, I think, for Belizeans this morning. The announcement was made last night about the third COVID-19 case in the country.
Confirmed.
Third confirmed. Very valid point. And while the Director of Health Services did not say what region, the information suggests that it is a person who is on mainland Belize and most likely in Belize City. We know the Prime Minister is to give a press conference or press update to find out exactly what new measures will be taken. But as a physician, and I want to be clear, an internist is someone who does intensive care and, well, but you also are very aware of the type of treatment that it takes to get someone to recover from this illness. Let me start with your perspectives.
Well, as you say, that I do the internal medicine and I do intensive care.
Yeah.
You hear about intensive care and ventilators and so forth. Honestly, I don't want this situation get there. I don't want we use one single bed for intensive care for this thing in Belize, okay? Because by the time they reach intensive care, they got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, okay? And we try pull it out, okay? The bestest medicine for this right now, the preventative, okay? I repeat, the best medicine, more than the fancy machines and so, for the preventative, which is stay home, social distancing. And every goddamn Belizean need to have the responsibility, the duty to themselves, to their family, to Belize country, for practice their thing appropriately. Okay? You don't need government for to tell you, stay home and do this. You have to take it by your own and do that. Okay? And whatever the permutations, the adjustments on need for do in our lifestyle, start to do it now and figure out that for the next month, maybe next 2 months, do it that way. But for yourself, for your loved ones, for your neighbor, for whoever, you need to start to do that. Okay? And not they expect that, oh, government not got so much ventilators and testing and blah, 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 and blue. No. Stay the F home. Okay?
Strong.
I never cost Marlene.
I know.
Okay? I think stay the F home and social distance. These are the best way to get this thing. Okay?
The seriousness with which you're saying this message and clearly opening this way, it's with a particular reason. I've found that conversations with medical professionals especially, they're most concerned that if people don't do what they have to do right now, what the future may hold. And that's the critical part. Dr. Cuellar, you have been talking about preventative medicine for a long time, from people with diabetes, hypertension, everything under the sun. But you know it's hard, that people don't always listen and they always take things lightly, especially if they can't see the immediate threat.
Right. Valid point, Marlene, but this is a different horse. This is a different animal. Worldwide, planet-wise, we have never faced this before. Nobody have all the correct answers. But clearly, we look at countries that have gone through this, it is clear that the countries that do the draconian measures, and draconian mean that the hard measures, condone hard early, that the one will come out the best out of this. Okay? Which will put me to my next point. One demand that the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition and desires shut this country down today or as soon as possible. I demand. Okay?
What is your justification for this?
Because these are the best medicine, Marlene.
Okay.
These are the best medicine. These are the best remedy. And these are not my thing. Me not so bright for come up with their ideas. Okay? But look at the countries. look at the testimonies. Then he try, why, if we do this now, well, economic this and economic that, maybe if you not do it, it will be worse.
Yeah.
It will be worse. The cost of not doing it will be worse. And I want to implore that the technocrats at the top, the Manzaneros and the George Gaff and the, well, them people were in the Ministry of Health demand that it happens this way. Okay?
Now,
Good. I have another point.
Go ahead.
I want to applaud the healthcare workers. I want to apply the nurses, the ICU people, the hospitals are standing by because we wait for the wave come. But the people them where they do the preventative, the mapping, which you know what happen, they happen. Okay, then are the people where have to go and okay, case number 1, case number 2, case what are you made there? They have to spend that lengthy time in contact with them.
Yes.
Okay, hopefully properly
Protected.
and tell them, listen, I spend the next 4 hours to tell her, you're going from point A to point B, you remember who you say, who you never see, who you talk to, who you come in contact with, and then that's how they do the mapping or the contact tracing.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because I wanted to be able to clearly talk about what that involves. I mean, it's like if I stop for tacos, all the little details in between. So you have to go back and try to find every person that you came in contact with.
Every possible contact. You could get most of them. I don't think you could get all of them.
Yeah.
But definitely, you have to do that vigorously.
Which is interesting here because in the third case, the third confirmed case, we are saying that the individual entered the country on March 20th, took ill on March 25th, so that when he flew into Belize, not only were the frontline workers at the airport exposed, despite the fact that he was asymptomatic at the time, but between March 20th and March 25th, God knows who all this person may not have been in contact with during that period of time.
Well,
And
we're hoping
we've
he
talked about
self-isolate.
self-isolate, which is questionable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We have to define what isolation and quarantine. No? That means that you are staying in your house, hopefully staying in a room, if you have that facility at home, because sometimes we tell people for self-isolation, you got one room house.
Yeah.
But keep to yourself as much as possible. In a house, you have to do your same hand wash every 15 minutes, every hour, whatever. Practice all of the good things then, like use lead tissues for wipe your nose, cough, then kind of thing. But you could self within your house. Now, I do think that we forgo for self, meaning beg pan the good sense of the person, goodwill. We see that that hasn't worked within, that's only past 2 or 3 cases. Mandatory. Okay?
Well, that's what the
Make
recent
them go home.
release.
If you need be put on police front of their house.
That's what the
Okay.
recent release is saying, that essentially they will be quarantined at their own expense. And we've seen some areas
Mandatory.
be set up
Put one
already.
police side of there and say, don't go nowhere else. Well, you find, yeah, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
Okay? Draconian measures. But you can save the country millions of dollars. You can save a lot of deaths from happen.
Yeah.
Okay?
You spoke of the shutdown or the shelter at home. There are lots of terms that people use all over the world, the lockdown. But explain to me from a medical perspective why this is critical. Right now we're being asked to social distance, minimize gatherings to 10. There's some steps being taken.
Because the virus don't move by itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
People have to move it.
airborne.
Yes.
People have to move it. Even if they're airborne, people still move it.
Yeah.
So if you stay in a room where nobody there, only the TV don't catch virus. Okay? Your clothes don't catch virus. Well, you catch, but you stay there. But you're not spread from person A to person B. So stay locked down.
Yeah.
Okay? This time a bullet where you can't see the come. Okay? And you have to know, you have to dodge it before it come in your direction.
My observation, Doc, is that while this is a very deadly strain of virus, when you look at some persons who have come forward in other jurisdictions to say that they have tested positive for COVID-19, some people get through it fairly easily, whereas others, the death toll keeps mounting.
I mean, this is a new virus.
Isani.
Just to correct you
What
there.
am I again?
Love FM.
Love FM, sorry.
Yes.
Wanna
Go
look
ahead.
alike, wanna look- This is one new thing. We don't know much about it with the land as with the Golan. Okay. You said deadly, but in truth, you have more deadlier disease.
Okay.
Okay. So you're not that deadly. You're very spreadable though.
Okay. Communicable, right?
No, Scoffy don't know what that communicable. I know what that's spreadable.
Contagious.
Contagious.
Yes,
Yeah.
So out of everybody who get sick, he could infect, mess up 3 other people easily.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you heard at the beginning you may hear, "Boy, this is old people disease, and it's over 60 you have to have diabetes." But clearly, the data, the information will come out that younger people they get licked up.
That's right.
Big time. Okay. New York, they see it right now.
Yes.
Big time. So everybody, even the young people where they hang out, no, you at risk for death, and what's around, you will contaminate other people where in a worse condition like you.
Yeah.
So, okay, so looking up the numbers, and I always say this, there's a lot that we don't know, and the information is collected as we go along. We're 3 months into the discovery
The world.
of this new disease. What we do know is that 80% will have mild to moderate symptoms, but 20% will most likely require hospitalization. I'm sure you've seen the stories of people in hospitals. This is not, as was first communicated, a bad flu. In fact, it's a lot worse than that and requiring very intense treatment within the hospitals. Talk to me about that perspective.
Very good point, Marilyn, because the statistics are true. And this if this serve anything, this one calm with them, because everybody are panic today. Believe you me, panic they happened from last night. So we need to tell the Belizeans, be overcautious, but no need for panic. Take care of yourself, no need for panic. Okay? You no need for to run wrong like chicken without head. Okay? So out of 10 people will get it, 8 of them could stay home and stay in their room, if they have a room. Okay? The next 20 will need hospitalization. That part, out of that 20, that 15 will need hospitalization. It is our duty as the healthcare workers for not make them get worse so that they need intensive care. So they need the oxygen, they need monitoring good, we need the x-rays, we need the blood gases, we need all that. So we prevent that go the next step. The last thing I want to say, that the ICU full up. Because when ICU full up, mean that take up one bed for 14 days, 10 days. And what happened to the other things where when really did not the non-COVID. So it put one strain on the whole system. Okay, so one of our biggest focus, I think, and I'm glad that the Karl Huschner and other districts, hospitals, everybody, they put things in place so that they could take care of the people requiring hospitalization.
So we seem to be taking a phased approach here in Belize, looking at things changing with the first case. Right now we're at imported and close contact. The next phase would be human-to-human transmission, which means someone got it or someone tests positive who didn't travel or who didn't knowingly come in contact with someone who had COVID. But you said that you feel the best time to be able to shut down is right now, before we even detect the human-to-human transmission case. That's what you agree with?
Yes, definitely. I well trained and I like them fancy words, but imported.
Imported means somebody bring it in.
I know what it means.
Yeah.
But the virus don't grow up on a tree. It never grow up on no Belizean tree. It had to come from somewhere. Had to come from somewhere. If we never find out where it come from, then, oh yes, this is not imported. This is community spread. Then call it community spread when they do all an improper tracing and say, you know what, as far as we don't know, then you call it community. You don't get there yet. Well, I don't know about this last one. But we're not for the confused people, put imported and local and community spread. We got.
But it makes a difference in terms of understanding how far the virus is spreading. I mean, in the United States, for example, when people suddenly popped up who did not travel, you realize that basically the disease is moving around without us knowing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, the point now to highlight is that could have no symptoms. And you spread the disease. Or shed the virus, then call it. Okay, but you could spread and you feel good. But boom, 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 you let out that virus big time. Okay, that's why we have to have that social responsibility and we have to protect ourselves. Okay?
All right, so let's talk about what responsibility we should have. So people should stay in as much as possible and minimize contact.
And come out only when absolute necessary.
All right.
Either for your essential job, or go buy grocery,
Yeah.
or go fill up your medicine, or go buy water. It cannot got nobody for bring water for you, or something like that.
Yeah.
Unless it's absolutely necessary, you come out.
Yeah.
And each workplace should already, because they're not today we talk about this thing.
Yeah.
These are 3 months now. Each workplace should have at least on paper one plan,
Yeah.
and I know for execute that plan. I call on other people, the religious leaders, the council of churches, the chamber of commerce for work with the businesses. I call on the NGOs, the industries. Everybody have to chip in
Yeah.
for make this thing go, and we could get through.
Let me ask you
We
a
are
question
tough
here,
people,
Doc,
man.
quickly. So there's no known cure for this virus. How can it be treated? In terms
Basically,
of-
we call it supportive treatment. Okay, meaning that we not got one medicine where we knock out the virus. You hear a lot of experiments happening, lot of trials. Where you hear about Plaquenil and Zytromax and the antivirals. Okay. And with the grab at anything, oh shucks, this one look like it
It's
works.
kind of trial and error, isn't it?
Exactly. So we don't got one specific treatment. When they reach when they need hospital, you need oxygen, your IV, make sure that you deal with other, because not only virus exists, you got a blood pressure to deal with, you got a sugar for deal with, you got
Yeah.
a kidney function for deal with, and God forbid they need intensive care, you need a ventilator for help them breathe, because then they struggle and can't breathe. And if you don't deal with it in a couple of hours, you call Mr. Alam or Mr. Kowe. Okay, that's it. You think? And by the time I reach ICU, maybe we're in trouble.
It's already
We're
critical.
in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no care how fancy ventilators we use, and we could go a room full of ventilator.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting that you
Okay.
said that, because I know a lot of people are very concerned with
Exactly.
number of ventilators.
I have advice for got ventilator home. They want to get money.
Yeah.
Could I buy a ventilator because they know the system will get or could get
Overwhelmed.
overburdened.
But your message is do what you can not to get
Exactly.
there. Let's talk about our high risk populations though. So we have on average, I believe the last count was about 7% elderly population. We have hypertension, diabetes, very common in the country. We have people who are on cancer treatments. We know people who are asthmatic or have lung or heart disease. They will also be at risk. What's your advice to them right now?
Yeah, they have a certain sector of the population where know that the immune system compromised, and then do a daily practice in our everyday life.
Yes.
People with cancer therapy, people with HIV, people with diabetes, people with autoimmune disease like lupus. So they don't make that one level of care or concern about getting sick now. So they need for ratchet up one a little bit more, okay?
Yeah.
Double it up.
Yeah.
Now the people where like got lung diseases, they also you have to consider, I know the asthmatics, the people with emphysema, with chronic bronchitis, with COPD, then kind of thing. They also need to be on the lookout more. Sugar and pressure also in this category.
Yes.
Okay, and there are specific medical reasons why they single out the two conditions.
Yes.
Okay, when it comes to sugar and pressure for this particular thing. So people with high blood pressure, people with heart disease, people with that. So that put you at 15 different specific groups of medical condition where you have to be on the lookout for. And if they catch it, then they one way do worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they one way do worse.
Should they
Okay.
perhaps make attempts to be even more isolated than the rest of the public?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I am relieved that there are people who reach out to your doc. I don't want to come out. I don't want to
Yeah.
go. Give me 3 months medication.
Yeah.
And if I need anything, I could call you, or I could call the hospital, or I could call somebody.
Yeah.
So they don't have to expose themselves.
That's a critical
Yeah.
point. I know the Ministry of Health and NHI have put out a notice that if you are on medication for diabetes or hypertension, or if you have medication to collect from them, you can get, I think, 2 months worth
Right.
of medication. All you have to do is call. And that's the other thing. If I have hypertension or diabetes, should I perhaps avoid going to a public clinic at this time?
Of course, you dip on medication, you make sure you get a supply unless you start to feel unwell,
Yeah.
then you try the phone lines first.
Call first.
Try first, and maybe you
Yeah.
could get help that way before getting, unless it's really necessary, then you go to a clinic.
Here's a
What we
curiosity of
haven't-
mine, and I'm not sure who to ask the question, but I'll just put it out there. How long are we to wait this thing out? Because
That's
some people
another
are saying
question,
2,
my
3
boy. A lot
months.
of people
but
ask that.
What if it rears its ugly head in September, for instance? We're far away from 3 months
Yeah, yeah.
in September.
Yeah, those are valid, very valid concerns, and even the leaders have trouble with this because they have to plan, no? They have to plan for the country. Why I say make we prepare anywhere between 1 to 3 months for now. Or on the side of over caution.
Yeah.
So
Or
it
about
subsides in 3 months.
No, that's the
threat
thing.
of it,
We don't know yet. We don't
don't
know
know.
if when we get exposed to it, if our body makes, our immune system makes the level of immunity so that we don't catch it again. We don't know yet. So those are very much on another second. We would think, like every other virus, you do create immunity, right? Hopefully this one behave like the millions of
Yeah.
viruses that exist, and you do develop immunity afterwards.
Which is why a
But
lot
we,
of eyes.
all our immune system are not, have not been exposed to this part, so nobody got immunity right now. And then they do studies right now from the China and the South Korea, where they have gone through the worst, and then they figure out, well, yeah, we could measure how to measure the immune system, the antibodies, so that we could say, you know what, this person is thing. And that come in hand with our vaccine, no, that we hope
Yeah.
by the end of the year we could get to a valid vaccine.
I mean, I think that's why everybody's watching China right now
Yeah.
to see. They're 3 months after to see what's happening there, and we know they're having challenges with cases being reintroduced as well. But I want to go back to the clinic visits. We have not seen here as yet, where we've seen in other countries, where a specific respiratory clinic is set up. In other words, if you have flu-like symptoms, you go to one place so that if it's Cleopatra White, for example, I don't have to go to Matron Roberts and expose the pregnant women who come in for care or the other people who are coming in for care. Is that a move in the right direction?
Definitely. And that mean parallel to Ketchville Medical, where we shoot ourselves in at the foot. I think that release may be a bit too premature because the system weren't fully in place yet. It wasn't tested.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully this week we can have that in place. Not only in Belize City.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
Arinjoa, Carazal, Stan Creek,
Everywhere.
everywhere. Okay, even our village, even a Barranco.
Yeah.
It make we have one spot where we take care of respiratory symptoms.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully, and I know that lots of efforts are being put to do that right now. We don't want everything done, but it can't happen so fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, looking at the situation that we're in right now, you move around. We can only talk about Belize because that's where we're based. But there are some who take it seriously, and I can see less movement, but we still see some people moving around and kind of casually living their life. What would be your message in terms of having them understand the gravity of what we're facing?
Looking at the car and then stay there at home. And if you're not staying at home, they'll pick you up and put you home. Okay, with a plea to your reasonable and your brains and we know and you care and with a loving country and so forth. But if you're not the way, we tell you for do, maybe I'll ask you for do, we'll pick you up.
Yeah.
Thing done.
Yeah.
Okay, enough talk.
Yeah.
Enough talk. This is a time for act now. And we Belizeans have the responsibility for doing the correct thing. We have the best medicine that we had.
Yeah.
We don't need Dr. Quer and Dr. Arriaga and Dr. Hidalgo and the fancy boys. We need ourselves for common sense and your family.
You're right. You're literally right in saying that it's all in your hands, because that's where it begins
So you
and
bring your
ends
alcohol with you?
the
Is that what you have there, or
responsibility.
hand sanitizer?
Hand sanitizer, my dear.
Oh, okay.
I had a big time.
Okay.
All right.
Then jack you for your hand sanitizer, no for your chin and your...
Yeah. You know, it's a very concerning time. And I think if we keep on watching the U.S. media, which is predominantly what we're exposed to, we can see how bad it can get when you're talking about their healthcare system being overwhelmed. But the difference is that they have a lot of mixed messages going out, And they also have had a delayed reaction in terms of shutting down or limiting movement in their different states. So your recommendation, we're hearing from you very clearly, is do the
Strongly.
shutdown from now.
Demand. That ain't my opinion. Demand was shut down.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right. Any other advice you'd offer to the public?
Don't panic. Don't panic. In my practice, I've seen stressful situation, and as a leader of the team, you should not panic. You transmit that to your team, and things go better.
Yeah.
The moment you start to panic, everybody around you panic. But you have to stay
Then
calm.
mistakes are made,
and
etc.
Exactly, calm and collected,
Yeah.
and you get through this.
What do you say to your colleagues in the medical profession who are
Speak up.
perhaps more concerned?
Speak up.
About-
We so loving, although we tend to shut up and no one match nobody too, and blah, blah, blah. And you know, this is not just about COVID, this is about everything. So speak up, right? Get on the famous social media, buy yourself time, and Medical and Dental Association, Nursing Council, any relevant bodies have to speak up. Demand, okay? Only know where they talk about, okay? The Nursing Association come out or the Nursing Council come out today and say, we demand a shutdown, okay? They're not just crazy queer they talk.
Yeah, it's a very critical situation, and I think that we appreciate your honesty and your stern warning as well. We all have a responsibility to play, and we have to do our part. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about self-isolation, speaking to one person who has been in isolation since he returned from outside of the country. That's coming up after the break.
With over 100 years of service excellence in Belize, the Belize
And we are back, and we're moving into our second conversation for today. As we told you, we are going to dive deeper into what it takes to self-isolate when you have returned to the country. So we are joined this morning via Skype with Dr. Filiberto Pinedos, who is the founding advisor for the Center for Engaged Learning Abroad, Belize. It's called CELA, Belize. And he returned from Canada. He's on day 12 of self-isolation, and he's joining us via Skype this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Doc.
Hey, good morning.
So this would be the most the public has seen you since you returned, right?
Pretty much, yes.
Dr. Pinedos, thank you for joining us this morning. Your participation in this interview is an opportunity for people to understand the responsibility we have when we're asked to self-isolate. Talk to me about your decision to return to the country in the first place.
Well, you know, I was traveling for about a little bit less than 2 weeks, and I already was scheduled to come back. And so I was in Toronto, where, as you know, they've had quite a few cases, and they're beginning to have some community spread. So returning to Belize, I was concerned. I have a 93-year-old father who lives with us, and of course, there were no cases in Belize. I was concerned that I might be the person who brings it them. Of course, I don't want that. I tried to take all kinds of precautions to make sure I avoid being in contact with coronavirus while I was in Toronto. And I had a flight to come through the U.S., but I knew that was going to be through Miami. And concerned about that, I managed to get a flight with WestJet. Thankfully, the flights were very cheap. Nobody was traveling. So I came flight direct to Belize.
Yeah. So what was the instruction? Talk to us about the experience coming into the country and the instructions that you received there at the port of entry in terms of self-isolation.
Right. You know, I mean, because we were coming from Canada, Canada is not one of those countries that is listed as, you know, like I don't know if you're coming from China or Italy or any of those other places. So basically, we were asked where we were coming from. And since we were coming from Canada, they did not give us any instructions to self-isolate. I think most people that were going to self-isolation are probably doing it on their own volition for precautionary measures.
Okay. So you took the choice to self-isolate after returning to the country?
That's right, I did. As I said, I had been already at the airport in Winnipeg and the airport in Toronto twice. So I just felt that, you know, I needed to take that measure. As I mentioned, an old parent, and you know, it's better to earn the caution side than to, you know, take it lightly and end up creating more problems.
Now, Doc, you're 2 days away from completing your 14-day isolation. What has the experience been like for you? Because some persons, I presume, would be sort of concerned about being locked away from the public or seeing the light of day, so to speak, for that length of time. What has that been like?
All right, well, I mean, it's not like one is locked inside a dark room, you know, with nothing, no light and no air coming in. I don't think that's the situation, right? I am lucky that we have kind of a detached little house from our main house where I can go and stay, and this is kind of where I'm staying. So I, with my family, we had kind of discussed this, and we made lots of arrangements. Like, for example, they came to the airport, took me up, but they brought the vehicle so that they could leave a vehicle for me to take myself home. And then when I came, I went straight into self-isolation. So they had brought stuff that, you know, they brought my computer and clothes and, you know, the stuff that I need. And so this is kind of where I'm staying. I read a little bit about self-isolation, saying, well, you don't have to lock yourself and you need a well-ventilated area. You have to keep your distance. So I can still go outside. I'm in a little separate unit. I can still go out in the veranda and I can speak to my family across from the yard. And they bring the food to me. Then they leave it there, and then I go pick it up. I wash my own dishes, and when the dishes pile up, then I wash them and I soak in chlorinated water as well, and so that they can take it back. So it's not like you are in a dark room. I know at the beginning I thought, my self-isolation is everything. I mean, the most difficult thing is, of course, I'm not able to be with my family and have a meal with them, able to give them a hug, watch a movie with them. I think, and that's kind of a little bit hard, not being able to go for a walk into the village because for precautionary measures. Now, as I understand it, I could probably go for a walk as long as I go like late in the evening, when there are no people on the road, and I'm not coughing or anything like that. Actually, the first day when I came, I went at night for a walk. But then I realized that people are also concerned out there. So I decided to stay just at home, and I go for a walk in the yard. Like when the family is in, I can go. They give me some space so I can go and walk for 20 minutes. 20 minutes after. That's how exercise is kind of a challenge because a couple of days you I don't know, you feel really anxious and can't settle down. But in general, it's not terrible.
Let me ask you a follow-up question, Doc.
Sure.
Speak to us on the importance of this personal responsibility to be able to self-isolate so that even if you are affected by the disease, you don't pass it on to family and friends and other persons by extension. How important is this responsibility?
I mean, it is huge. It is a huge responsibility. One, I mean, to travel is really a privilege, right? I mean, of course, some of us travel for work, but still, it is a privilege to be able to travel. And people are staying home, and there are people who are already ill, or people who do not have a job, or have recently lost their employment. If you imagine what it would mean if they were to get ill, that's a big responsibility that I certainly take seriously, and I think we all need to. Of course, in my immediate family, there are people who if they would get sick, terrible for them. But beyond my family, in terms of the community, I think we can't afford to spread this virus. So it's a huge responsibility. I like what New Zealand was doing, and they said everybody coming into the country, no matter where you're coming from, you go into self-isolation for 14 days to prevent.
Now, Dr. Pinedos, you are in Toledo. In which village?
Right now I'm in Sokot. So no, I haven't been to.
I thought you were home. Okay, so when you came back and you made all the arrangements for your self-isolation, I think people don't understand the extent that you have to go when you're self-isolating. You mentioned something critical. You've not hugged your family since you returned home, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And that was something that I was concerned about. Of being at the airport, I mean, but first of all, people say they should test everybody who comes into the country. Well, I realize that's not possible. Even with the countries that do have the resources, they're not able to do that. So they have to be very strategic in who they're testing. So it's our personal responsibility to try to help. And so for me, coming into the country, it was like I knew I needed to be away from people. And as I mentioned, I drove myself home, and I could only wave at my family. And that is a hard part, because you think I don't feel sick. I don't feel in any way sick. sick. So it should be okay. Yesterday, for example, was a particularly tough day. I think it's Sunday, and this is the second Sunday I've been home and haven't been to see the family. This time it's family time. We share a meal together, all of that. And so yesterday was particularly hard. And you think like, okay, it's a 12th day, nothing has happened, probably okay. But I know that it isn't. I mean, I should go for the 14 days. So, and there are other things that one needs to do, or at least that I've been doing, like even like, for example, washing clothes. I read a little bit about it and how to handle that. But I don't have a washing machine here. So, they give me a bucket of water with soap, and so I can put it there.
Yeah.
And kind of wash them already so that they can take it to the washing machine. But anything in the clothes would be, neutralized and they'd be safe.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that,
And even the bathroom that you use, you're
you have to
using
think
a
about.
separate bathroom? Because that's also part of the
Fortunately,
concern.
That's right. I mean, fortunately, I'm using a second bathroom, so that makes it a lot easier. But the little thing, even with the children, like I have my son, he wants to come around, and then I said, no, you stay away, stay at good distance. We can talk, stay at good distance. And he looks at me and said, but you're not sick. Of course, I'm not sick, right? I was even thinking about, so we have pets, right? And the pets are around. I was thinking, should I pet the pets, right? And then they're going over there. So little things like that to consider. And because you're not sure, I mean, you just simply don't know whether you are infected or not. And I've heard about cases where people have very mild kind of symptoms, so you have to take the precautions.
Now, you're really a great example of someone who's taken the full responsibility of voluntarily executing and properly executing self-isolation. I know you're aware that, in fact, our index case and that self-isolation was not adhered to the way you have. What would be your message to people who are currently under self-isolation or need to go into self-isolation about all the things you shouldn't do?
Well, first of all, as I said, we shouldn't be shaking hands, shouldn't be hugging family as much as one would want to. You got to keep your distance away from people. And then, of course, everybody's telling you, wash your hands. Where I am, I make sure that I wipe stuff. And once I go out of self-isolation, we'll clean this place, the surface, with Clorox and stuff like that. That's very important. I think the main thing that I see is that the danger is that we feel, I'm okay, I don't feel sick, okay? And there's no way that I could be sick. And that you go out and, lower your guard. And I think that's the dangerous part. It's better to err on the too cautious side than assume that everything is okay. To me, that's kind of the main thing. Think, look, I am not absolutely sure that I'm okay. So it's better to self-isolate, to practice social distancing, to practice those things for the benefit of other people. Because, okay, if I'm sick, well, I will have to deal with that, but I don't want to be this of the illness.
Yeah. So you're on day 12. No symptoms so far.
No symptoms. Fingers crossed.
All right. And, well, we do wish you, how do you keep yourself occupied 12 days in? Lots of Facebook?
Lots of Facebook, computer. I have
guitar there, yeah.
Nice.
Tocar la guitarra.
So you've made up a isolation COVID song already?
I have. But
You're not going to share that with us?
No, I'm a little bit too shy. I probably on video. I might share a video later on.
Okay. Well, we were looking for someone to talk about the details of self-isolation. We're glad that we were able to get you. There are people who will be placed in self-isolation if they return to the country or if they've come in contact with someone who's positive for COVID-19. So we hope that they've paid attention to your experience and learned all that they have to do.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Doc.
Best of luck. 2 more days. You're almost there.
That's right. Thank you.
All right. And with that, of course, Isani, that was the opportunity to talk to someone in self-isolation, Dr. Filiberto Pinedos, who is on day 12.
It's interesting hearing from him what that experience is like day in and day out.
Yeah. Big responsibility, and I think he communicated so well all the precautions that have to be taken, albeit uncomfortable. Nonetheless, he must do it, and he sees his role as important in being able to do so.
Definitely.
So we are going to move ahead with the show for this morning, and we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking the business perspective, looking at the COVID-19 response and impact so far. So please stay tuned.
COVID-19
And welcome back to the final segment of our show this morning. We have been joined on the set by our friends from the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and they will speak to us on the Chamber's response to COVID-19 and business continuity. That being said, we have with us Catherine Main. She is a member of the National Oversight Committee. Good morning. We also have Kay Menzies. She's the past president of the Belize Chamber of Commerce. Good morning, Kay. And we also have Giacomo Sanchez. He's the treasurer of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Morning, all.
Good morning, my friends. Let's begin, first of all, by talking about the Chamber's response, perhaps to collective concerns from members in response to COVID-19.
Would you like me to start? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. I got the eye. All right, so first and foremost, the Chamber has been actively collaborating within the Oversight Committee, also with the task force as well. I must say we also have a member on that task force, and his name is Dr. Andre Sosa. Yes. In terms of the collaborative efforts, there's a number of different activities and things on the way, in a sense. Some of them include collaboration on the collection of data, right? Yes. We have to make data-driven decisions as best as we possibly can. Of course, time is not allowing us to do that in many ways, but we are doing so as best we can. Some of the things, and I will give the plug from the start, is we have a survey that we're circulating to our members, and also we placed it onto our website and via our social media feeds as well. And that is essential because that survey is asking business owners the questions that are essential for us to then be able to better analyze the financial effects, right, and the loss of the layoff effects as well, to add to and many other components. So that's one of the areas we're collaborating. We've been actively collaborating with the Labor Department as well in trying to address points that our members are bringing to us, such as the point of temporary layoffs and what does that mean, right? So there's all of these different components behind the scenes that are happening for us to be able to be a contributor as best as possible. One of the key points as well that we're working on is ideas and suggestions and a wish list of the various measures for employer stimulus arrangements, right? At some point we will get into a recovery stage and we will come out of this, and what is essential is that our economy gets moving during and after, right? We have to think about all those components as well, alongside the most significant, which is the health. We have to factor in the health of our people, our nation, but we also have that economic component, and we're trying to contribute as best as possible in that area.
I guess that's a balance that we're all trying to keep at this time. We can see the economic impact immediately, but we recognize that the primary focus right now has to be what's taking place in the health aspect of the pandemic. We've heard the stories of the layoffs. We've heard the explanation of where the aid will go at this point in time. Catherine, you mentioned that you started your survey. What's some of the preliminary data saying so far?
Basically, what we're finding is that businesses don't, in terms of layoffs, businesses don't regard that as the first move. There are some that have no choice because of the quantum of employees they have versus going down to absolutely no business at all. But what we found was that sort of ranked third on the list of things to do first. What we also found was that on average, businesses figured that the fall off in business would be at least 20% of their annual projections. So this is scary because if 20% of your income disappears overnight, and it may be that some will find that this is conservative along the way, you have to find a way to make that up because you still have your bills to pay, you still have your bank financing. One of the collaborators in this crisis that has been absolutely sterling in coming out fairly early as we're feeling our way through this is the central bank, and they have worked with the banks to institute some measures to give relief. But in a problem of this magnitude, everybody has to find a way through it's gonna have a cost. The idea is to have as minimal a cost as possible. The survey's been pretty good about that. What we will probably do is issue more surveys along the way as we go through this. For example, for employers to figure out if I'm going to come out the other end, if I'm going to be able to reopen in the case of those who are totally closed, how much financing will I need in order to have that happen? So we will be continuing to gather data as we go.
Just a question, what time frame are you using? You say a 20% less than currently projected, but we don't know how long we'll be experiencing, whether people have voluntarily closed or have been told to close down. What time frame are businesses using?
Different businesses are using different estimates, but a lot of it is tied to what happened to the tourism industry.
Yeah.
And so if you look at that and you look at the trajectory of COVID-19 in other countries, basically this tourism season is over, and what you're seeing out there is people are projecting for hopefully a slow startup when we're back in the usual tourism cycle. So maybe September, October.
Okay.
For a beginning of the next season, no? But it's anybody's guess.
Yeah,
I'm hearing ranges outside of that.
Yeah, I do. If I were to kind of look further down into this year, one of the key aspects of the tourism coming back is the fact that people who travel, who would come to our destination, if they don't have the appetite to travel. So I think you're right in saying that this tourism season is pretty much over. And so that's the magnitude of potential losses, at least to businesses and business owners in industry and all the ancillary sectors that depends on it.
Within your membership as a representative body, do you find from businesses that perhaps they did not have certain contingencies in place to deal with something of this nature? I mean, it's the first of a kind for us, but do you find that perhaps similarly to how some businesses have certain measures in place in the event of a hurricane or something of that sort, do you find that perhaps there were any contingencies as to why some, if not a majority of businesses have shut down as a result?
I think Giacomo would be in the best place to answer the business situation. What I will say as an overall observation is that most businesses are not able to cushion themselves several months out in the current climate. We've been able to pay our bills and get along and, you know, meet our financing requirements and this kind of thing. But it's very few businesses that you find that have that kind of financing cushion that says, listen, I can weather a storm of 6 months.
Okay, so if we examine, look at the spectrum of our economy, there's quite a bit of businesses that what we would consider small and medium in our context. And without any level of sophistication, they don't do proper planning and budgeting. And so it comes down to dollars and cents that you haven't been setting aside anything, therefore you're a crisis of this magnitude. You know, wherever you can get some assistance, help, I think that is where that's where we are as a country.
Who do you see being, I mean, the tourism sector understood, but looking at the range of businesses in the country, who do you see having the worst effect, facing the worst effects?
I think it's across the board. There's no...
You think we'll have small business owners who won't open up back?
It will be a struggle. It will be a struggle.
Yeah. What will be the difference between some of these businesses being able to recover or not?
Access to financing and timely too, because, you know, they might be commitments towards their efforts. However, if the money isn't coming, then you can't reopen. You can't pay your staff coming back off this furloughed time, so to speak. So, I mean, those are the challenges that
what I
face.
find interesting as an observation here is the fact that a lot had been invested, in a manner of speaking, into ensuring business continuity, in times of natural disasters, but never in our wildest imagination would we have fathomed the idea of needing business continuity in something like this, where we hadn't experienced it before.
Well, and this is the thing, it's hard to plan for a 100-year event. The last time you had a pandemic impact the entire planet quite this badly, it was, and everybody's talking about it, the Spanish influenza. So now there are those out there, Bill Gates is one, but there are those out there who have for years been saying we have to be prepared for the next pandemic. But if you're running a small business, you have so many daily fires to put out. A pandemic is the last thing on your mind. And this is the truth of business worldwide, is you're busy trying to do business. And usually where you find good pandemic response, such as in Asia, it's because they have had pandemics in recent times. They've had SARS, they've had H1N1, bird flu, all these. And it has prepared them for this moment. What I would hope is when we come out of this, that we learn that, first of all, this is likely not the last. And second of all, that we develop a quick response approach that allows us to weather these kinds of moments. But even so, in a small business context, the idea for something like this is who has good cash reserves to keep their employees going, to keep their business going to some degree, or to shut down and take a break and say, I will do this in the meantime, and it's okay when we open, I'll open. It's very few businesses at the base of the pyramid that are able to do that.
And I can imagine people at home are probably watching and saying, we're talking about businesses, but what about the employees and the people who are not receiving a salary or have been laid off? But they're tied together, you know, the business has to support the staff. And that's a question I really want to get at. I've had so many people contact me, people who own businesses, and say, listen, I don't know, should I fire my employee? Because it seems that the current recovery efforts will be for persons who've been unemployed. And as you mentioned, quite a number of businesses have moved towards sending employees home, saying, giving them as little as they can, some nothing, and saying, when we open back up, you can come back. What are you doing in terms of advocating in people in positions like that? What do you say to employers who are saying, it may be easier if I fire my employee and they'll get something from Social Security?
I'll ask Kathy to.
You know, this was a point that we've been discussing, and part of that comes right back to one of the key points that we're working on, which is support for employers. There is a way of, I've been hearing some of the same, but some of the reverse, where there are a number of employers that are trying their best not to let go their employees. They understand that when we're in that recovery stage, they will need those persons back, right? And there are some loyalty components and some empathy and morality components that come into this as well, right? So that is a critical question that we are trying to develop further, and a part of that is providing those, one aspect of that is providing employers stimulus and support, so that they can then afford to prioritize their employees remaining with them as well. So yes, you're right, 100%. And that's a component that we need to continue our conversations with the czars and within these committees as well.
Yeah, I think it's a point needed to be clarified, because if the $150 every 2 weeks is only going to go to persons who are unemployed as registered by BTB or SSB, then, I mean, if I were an employer, I'd feel the same. If I'm not giving you money and I don't want to let you go, I may just feel like the best thing to do is to let you go.
So you can access that. Yeah. It's a tough one, and this is where I think we can't stress enough that everybody's in this together. Employer, employee, everybody's in this together, and if we're going to build back quickly, we're going to need to build confidence back quickly, both in terms of employers and employees. The idea is not to throw anybody out on permanent unemployment, and preferably not to throw anybody out on any kind of unemployment. But to do that, it means government and the private sector working together to say, look, I'm going to take some of the load off you, the employer, just make sure that you maintain your employee as a result. So, for example, the bank's saying, don't worry about financing for the moment, take a break on that. Then the idea is then transfer that to another cost, preferably your employment
Social
cost.
Security as
well. SSB too.
SSB has done really well with that. So the idea is that everybody's going to take a hit. There is no escaping taking some kind of a haircut off this, whether you're employer, employee, whoever. But the idea is that we spread that pain across in such a way that nobody suffers unduly. So if we can minimize unemployment or even find a way out of it, then we're way better off than saying, hey, everybody, lay off half your staff. That just doesn't work for us.
There are a lot of...
No, I was just going to say, tailing off of what Kay just mentioned, a lot of the indeterminate factor in this whole situation is that even as business owners, you don't have the luxury of doing a proper projection or analyzing how far out because of the uncertainty in terms of how long this will ensue. And so to me that is critical, and to me the public-private partnership, if I was to inform that decision making, it is really, you know, something redirecting certain amount of taxpayers' dollars to ensure that, you know, you maintain a staff, but then as a business owner you need to then match that, just to ensure that people just keep bread on the table.
From a business perspective or from a sort of economic outlook, I think another observation to be made here is how fragile our economy is based on the fact that tourism is the greatest driver, and when tourism takes a hit, you see that everything else is part of that ripple effect. What has been some of the observations from within the membership of the BCCI in respect of what's happening with tourism and how they are adversely affected as well?
You want to go first, Kat?
No, you go and then I'll come.
No, no. It's for us. Obviously, the observation has been for everybody that tourism took the hard hit. A lot of businesses are trying to figure out the diversification end, and agriculture is saying this is why you need to strengthen us. For example,
they have been saying,
they've been saying that for years. You know, guys, it's got to be more than this. There's the discussion, the eternal discussion of value added in agro-processing and this kind of thing. There's the eternal discussion. One overlooked segment is BPOs and really what they do for us as a foreign exchange earner themselves. The idea is not to vilify any part of the economy, because last year we had a tremendous drought and we were questioning whether agriculture was the way to go. The idea is to make sure you diversify enough that when one industry gets hurt, the other industries can step in to make up the space.
That it's not a total collapse.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the other side of that argument is that, I mean, we've always been selling the jewel. And how do you do that by not expanding and infusing more investments as an investor in the entire tourism sector? So it's a challenge because there's a great deal of opportunity when it's working. And like he said, I mean, this is 100 years ago. This was the experience then. I mean, we don't know when the next one might come, but in terms of getting through it right now, how our economy is structured, to me, that's the least of the the concern.
But it has to be a primary lesson learned through this experience.
Correct. What I was going to say to compliment her, well, in addition, the most important word there is diversity. Right? She said it. You said it about 2 or 3 times in that, and I think that's critical to remember. The other component is this is an opportunity for all of us. Let's look at it from a business planning perspective, right? To identify where our weaknesses are within our businesses, you know, across the board. You can take those circles up, you can bring those circles down, and that's the essential rule that I think is also critical, right? It's not priority one, but it must be a part of it, because as we've been talking about, this is a new normal, right?
The thing is that the businesses that make it through this best will be the ones that that are analyzing the situation and saying, we've got to come out of this. So what we do now has to ensure that we're building blocks towards coming out of this. And as the waters recede on tourism for the moment, look at what opportunities come to light. There have been and are many other opportunities within our economy, but everybody's been focused on what works, and what worked until about 2 weeks ago was tourism. So it's not to say tourism won't ever work again. And think about it, we have an advantage over our Caribbean brethren. Most of them are almost all tourism. We do have more diversification than them. The idea is just to build on that base.
You know, but even looking long term, I think one of the unknown variables is the implications it'll have on the U.S. economy and what that will mean for the tourism industry moving forward. We can be declared COVID-19 free, you know, best case scenario, but we won't have North American tourists coming down if they don't have their situation under control. So the long-term implications, I think that anyone who looks at what's happening, we realize it may be longer than just what we experience here. But I wanna move the conversation forward, because you have been speaking about business continuity. And very often in the midst of a crisis, it's hard to see anything beyond what's just in front of you. But that's what you're challenging your members to try to do. See how you can get through this period in phases or with strategic measures so that you can make it out at the other end. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Right. What are some of these strategies that you are suggesting?
Work from home is one of the critical strategies. I can speak for the BPO industry, and that's the direction, right? And that's important. That means that persons are able to continue to work, right? They're able to get income. They are also across the board as well. These businesses bring in foreign exchange, as we talked about, right? Yeah. So that's another component. We see that happening in the BPO industry. We see that happening in a number of service industries as well. So I'll take that one, so to give everybody else a chance to.
No, I was gonna, if you look at what's happening right now, all of a sudden the idea of being in a store is kind of thinning out because social distancing, and we don't know if we'll have a shutdown and so on. So already the change has begun, because some stores are starting to offer delivery services. Businesses are looking to go online that 2 weeks ago would never have contemplated doing that.
Yeah, there's innovation happening rapidly.
Right. So if you're in website building business, if you're in logistics business, this kind of thing, all of a sudden you're having more opportunity than you had 2 weeks ago. It's this kind of thing where you look and you see what's happening, you see what's trending, and will it continue, will it not? I don't think, once you learn that your groceries can be delivered to you at home and you can pay them by swiping a card on a portal, you're not going to unlearn that.
We're never going back.
It becomes part of how you do business going forward.
Right. So imagine all of a sudden, last week you were happy to run out to the store to get whatever. You needed a toothbrush, you drove down to the store, and all of a sudden, hold on, I can just order it online, and a guy shows up at my door with my toothbrush, and it's all paid for, and no exchange of cash and all that. These kinds of things happen. Work from home. Imagine your employer used to think that you had to go in and sit in front of him for him to think you have a productive work day. All of a sudden, he has to work with you by Zoom or whatever system. And at that point, he realizes, hang on a second, your productivity might be going up because you're not late on the bus, you're getting your full 8 hours, not having to worry about a commute or whatever. And these kinds of things.
All those rain or flood days that we used to have.
And so I do agree that the technology and innovation does help to a great degree. But I mean, we're not all service. The other parts of our economy that depends on hands-on type. You know, we have the construction industry. Thousands of people work in that industry. Agriculture, you know. So there's certain things we can't just depend on technology. So even those businesses now have to come with their own response in terms of how they stay afloat and in terms of getting on the other side of this pandemic.
Now let's talk about the possibility of a shutdown. The Prime Minister, I'd say infamously noted that he spoke to 2 doctors who suggested a lockdown and a business person who said don't in his last press conference. And here we are today. Let me get the business perspective. What are your thoughts on the country moving to a lockdown at this point in time?
What we're seeing is that a lot of countries have, you're seeing enough examples that are way ahead of us on the famous curve. And a lot of people are using El Salvador as an example, and they're saying El Salvador completely locked down and they barely have any cases, and that's a fair point. What you have to do, though, is plan a lockdown. A lockdown is probably inevitable. It's the thing that most doctors will tell you that business of keeping distant breaks the chain, and sometimes we just can't keep distant until somebody tells us to. But a lockdown has to be planned very carefully, because at the end of it, you want people to have jobs to come out to. And this is one of the things that we're hoping, that if we're moving to a lockdown, in some respects, I will tell you, some businesses are saying, I have so little business right now that I'm fine with locking down. And some are saying, I don't know how much longer I can afford to stay open. And that's a dangerous remark, because when they say that and they go to lockdown, that's a sign that they may not open again. You don't want that, because in this epidemic, you have healthy people with no jobs. That's not a good balance either. So at this point in time, if we're going to continue and fight COVID-19 properly, we have to fight it with all the tools the medical people tell us are at our disposal. The last thing we want is the community outbreak status to reach Belize. So you look at it that way, but plan it carefully. That's what we're asking.
So let's not leave any uncertainty. When you say that most likely you foresee a lockdown would happen, but you prefer all the planning to take place, what are we talking about here?
I think we've discussed it extensively, no?
Yes, we have. And there are a number of components that, and I will say that the planning has already started. So it's not like it's just starting now, but there is a series of components. Kimo mentioned the agricultural sector, right? So part of the planning process needs to include what sectors would be considered essential services. That's the critical component. Other sections, other parts of the planning will include, is there a curfew? Is there not a curfew? How do we balance grocery stores, for instance? And then how can we identify ways to ensure, to try to ensure there is social distancing when for essential services, for banks, for grocery stores, right? One of the ideas that we've been talking about is, for instance, maybe even odd numbers on social security. So persons have access to going out between the hours of such and such. If you are, the last number on your social security, the last number of your social security number is an even number, and another time if it's an odd number. So all these different components need to be factored in. There's also a transport portion of that as well, right? How do we practice social distancing responsibly via public transport?
But what is the primary? Okay, let's go down Albert Street right now. Majority of places are closed.
Right.
With the exception of the grocery stores, which have been doing an exceptional job in serving us so far. So, I mean, people seem to be self-implementing a shutdown already. So what is the hesitation in just saying, you know, we the business sector acknowledge that this is the best thing for the country to minimize the spread?
Don't know. No.
Or if there has to be some I's dotted or T's crossed before, tell us what those are.
From our point of view, it's a matter of saying, look, you need to keep the people fed, you need to keep access to medications and to banks. This is what's happening in most countries as we're observing it. If you do a lockdown in that context, and you do a lockdown
grocery,
for
bank, pharmacy, three things.
Grocery, banks, pharmacy, and the attendant. For example, in our country, we can feed ourselves. We are agriculturally rich. So in order for that to happen, it's not just the grocery store that has to stay open, it's the processor. For example, the poultry processor, if he's not putting out any chickens, you're not getting any food. No matter how the supermarket stays open, you're not getting your chicken, and so on and so forth. So the chain, the supply chain has to be cared for, but in a way that still spaces out. So you may ask the producers to move to a thinner shift system, so the worker, and find a way to maneuver in that way. Or you still have a public transport issue that you have to address because workers have to go to work if they're going to provide you food. These kinds of things require some thought, but there are precedents out there. It doesn't require months of thought. The idea, though, is in a lockdown, the motivation for a lockdown is to take the majority of people off the streets, put them in isolation, and break the chain of transmission. You're right. People are starting to do it. I was joking on Friday that Friday traffic in Belize City felt like Sunday traffic in the city. People are starting to find a way to stay off the streets and stay home. But at this point in time, if we make it a universal message and say we're going to do it in this way, be very clear in the messaging as to who stays open, who gets closed, and so on, so that, again, business people can plan and say, I'm with it. But there is support out there for the shutdown.
So what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's not that you are against the shutdown. You just want to ensure that all the messaging is clear. What stores or companies will remain open, who's going to stay processing the materials we need, who's going to be bringing in the cargo if that's part of it as well. So these essential mechanics need to keep going so that even if people are at home and they're allowed to come out one at a time, as in Italy, to get what they need, it's still available.
Right. And that's and do it carefully. The idea is not to keep us in prison because that will create a different kind of disaster. The idea is to do it in a way that we are properly isolated for the period of time necessary to sort of get the virus out of our airspace. I don't know that, I mean, we have to face the future with the virus in our lives, but right now the idea is to manage past a community outbreak, and we as Belizeans have a responsibility to help the health professionals do that. Because if we don't help them, they become overwhelmed, and that's, we've seen those stories. So one business person is not representative of the entire business community. The chamber represents over 900 employers. So, you know, the conversation has...
Careful of that cough.
Luckily, we're all socially distant from Giacomo. But the whole idea is that we do it in a way that doesn't cause people to starve to death or do without their medications.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let me flip to something else. I think there's been quite a number of companies that have really done a great job in being able to step forward and set the example as we face the pandemic. Some have sent home high-risk people to work from home, elderly populations to work from home, pregnant women, just without being asked, they've implemented these types of structures. But there are some companies that aren't quite sure, or perhaps are not implementing enough social distancing, being adequately prepared in monitoring sicknesses or movements or reducing transmission. What are you doing in terms of helping members to have them be cognizant of the steps that need to be taken?
The chamber's been passing out information.
Correct. We have an entire communication plan, in a sense, that talks about all of these different components. The critical communication stream for such is our website and our social media feed. Social media, you know, is a whole ball game in marketing and communication and PR. So I would recommend that anybody, businesses, employers, employees, visit our website and also visit our social media feed to get access to facts. Additionally, get access to important information that can help you with your business continuity planning. There is in fact a communication proposal that we put together, and it's on our website, and it's also, you can also access it via our social media feed that gives you pointers on what you can be doing right now if you're an employer, and trying to look for ways in which to ensure business continuity.
Yeah, and those were some of the interesting things I found in terms of staggering workers with the times they come in, or having different shifts for people to work. Just in the event someone gets sick, that you're not completely without the staff.
Make sure that your people are cross-trained, so that if one person shows symptoms, you can send them straight home and not interrupt your continuity. Simple things like that probably happen in other contexts too. So.
That's a very good point. There are some companies that are putting their employees through training right now, right? The tourism industry, we've heard this from many sources, that what they're doing is similar to what they would do in the slow season, right? Where they're starting to do all their maintenance work, et cetera, right? To keep things going and be prepared.
One of the things I wanted to implore with employers across the board in Belize, so that, you know, because at the end of the day, yes, preservation of life in terms of a shutdown is important, because then that reduces the rate of transmission. But I also believe that employers should try their best, those who can afford it, to at least tide over, even if it's a percentage of folks' salary during this period, because of the uncertainty of how long it will be. So, I mean, that's the message that they need to be sending to their employees, to say on something. This is not business as usual. We can't afford, because we have to take care of folks during this period of time. And as Kay said, we might end up with a much greater problem of a different sort.
One of the things that will come out of this, I think, is people will look and see who were the humanitarian employers. Who is it that I really feel has been a great leader through this crisis and has guided me, and because how you feel in terms of your confidence on a day-to-day basis. At this point in time, you don't know if your business will stay open. You don't know if you keep your job, if your boss is going to call you and tell you not to come in ever again. Communication with your employees is so critically important in a moment like this. Be open, you know, and say, look, this is the situation. We'll ride the storm together, and we'll get through it. And I mean, it's my firm belief that if you're as honest as you as the information you have with your team, you'll come out the other end with a team that will say, look, you were straight with me when it counted. And people respect that. We all respect that.
And I think that's part of the going message, is that, you know, despite the crisis that we're facing, if you stand shoulder to shoulder with the persons who you employ or the persons who you're employed by, then it goes a long way in terms of the rebuilding process, people's confidence in their employees and their employers.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I think we feel the same way about looking at businesses and how they step forward and what they're implementing as well, or going the extra mile.
Wow. Okay.
But let's, before we wrap up, just move away from kind of the micro picture to the macro picture. We had the Belize Hotel Association on last week, Ted, and he spoke of just a rough estimate at this time, $100 million a month in loss. That's what they're looking at in just the cancellations that they faced and everything that has happened with the pandemic. What are some of the things, and I can imagine as the business sector representing your members, we know there's a tough time ahead. What steps are being taken to do what we can now to somehow minimize the future financial crisis that everyone is predicting is looming?
This is where we need the government.
Yeah.
There's only so much that the banks can do. There's only so much that we together, together alone can do. This is why Catherine represents us at the oversight, and you know, we're having as good a dialogue as we can at that level, because if you look at it, the United States just approved a $2 trillion, I can't even visualize the zeros, right?
Yeah.
A $2 trillion package, and now the debate out there among the pundits is it enough? From that perspective, we have a $4 billion economy, from which I think one of the czars, I think Dr. Barnett mentioned, maybe it's 450, 500 million is projected to have disappeared over the next few months, which tallies with Ted's estimate of 100 million a month. If you're making 20% of your economy disappear just like that, there's going to be pain, and the only way you can alleviate that magnitude of pain is for the government to throw stimulus. But how they throw the mechanisms for that stimulus are also important, because you want it to be completely diffused throughout the economy, and you want it to be done in a way that ultimately the employees and the employers benefit, so that the economy not just survives this period, but comes back roaring very quickly.
What has been interesting to see, though, is that as a country, Belize has been adversely affected by COVID before the first case was ever confirmed. I mean, it's like we suffered COVID before COVID even reached our shores, in terms of how everything broke down.
Europe
the
had
cancellations,
outbreak,
the cancellations began before the cruise shut down.
So, but going back to it, what are the recommendations that you're making? I know it's not a very often sexy topic in terms of talking about assisting the business sector. You know, that's just a natural tendency that we have when we listen. But if we look long term, it is a conversation that has to be had. So what are you recommending? What are you looking at perhaps taking place in other parts of the world?
Okay, so there is and I know Kimo can also complement here on this point, but there is a number of different things that we're looking at. For instance, we have been talking a lot about, you know, how the banks can come into play and how they can support. Some of the different measures that we've already seen in place will be beneficial, but we know that right now, you know, we were talking about an idea, and maybe you can complement there, and then I will add afterwards.
I think it drives to the public-private partnership, where the government really steps in terms of assisting businesses, but I think it should be for the sole purposes of ensuring that they maintain employment for folks, because I think that's where we're hurting. I think all the other facets of your business.
Assisting businesses, what do you mean?
Provide them the same type of support.
Tax breaks, give money. I mean,
those would be some of your soft things that is not immediately seen, but as part of a assistance package, It's really to put monies in business hands and say, please pay your employees and ensure you're complementing, and there's different ways of getting that done. But at the end of the day, it's about part of the preservation of life is ensuring that people have food on their table and they're paid, and whether it's a very sliver of a percentage of what they should be earning, I think something is better than any number is greater than zero is better than nothing.
One of the we were briefly talking about this, but one of the points that I know Kibo and I were talking about is the component of identifying from, for instance, the next Social Security reporting, right? The levels of effect within these businesses, right? And identifying stimulus based on that. That would be a data-driven approach, right? Another key component or measure that we've been talking to the government on is GST refunds. Right, that's another example as well, where there can be a direct support to businesses and some businesses in the agricultural sector, for instance, that we will need and we will depend on now and into the future as well.
Faster movement on collateral, for example, land transfers or land title for collateral, moving faster so that a business can get its loan more quickly.
Correct. And the registration, right? You use a very important word there, innovation, right? There is some innovation coming out of this. So how do businesses get the opportunity to establish and register their businesses and get their bank accounts going, right? There is that component of it as well.
There's a whole lot to take in all at once. And as we said I know right now our primary focus has to be looking at the health and the survival of our people, but we cannot lose sight of the survival of the economy as well, because
that too is the survival of our people.
Precisely. Just moving forward, we've seen some businesses step forward and they're offering assistance as well, which is great because we're seeing where locally people are responding to help. But if we talk about the potential lockdown, and I want to get that issue addressed. Is there a time frame that you feel is best, or that you have looked at in terms of what could have the least impact on the economy?
I think the medical experts, they're indicating that 14 days.
14 days.
In the first instance. And I think it has to be reassessed then, because if you look around and see that there's no increase in infection and that kind of thing, then it's possibly working. But to me, that has to be reassessed after that
time.
Okay. Exactly what Kimo said, that the medical experts, if you're going to close for 10 days because that's all we can afford, it doesn't do any good for the virus.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole idea of a lockdown is to solve the transmission of the virus. So if we're going to do that, let's do that. Let's let the health community make use of that time to conduct testing and surveillance in a sort of a more, I don't know what structure they're using, but if we can do it in a way where we're staying home and they're able to surveil the situation a little bit more clearly, that's going to help us. And then, as Kimo says, at the end of that, with their testing happening during that lockdown period, we can reassess and see how we go from there.
I think one of the silver lining in this, if there's any, I think Belizeans and folks, just ordinary folks, getting the message, because it's like you alluded to earlier, it's like we put ourselves through a self-induced lockdown, because I mean there's hardly any activity on the streets that compared to
we'd still prefer less. Let's just be clear.
That's
but
true.
But there is a silver lining. That's the point I wanted to get at. It escaped me, and that's that we can feed ourselves. And there's a huge comfort. I think we don't talk about that we will have food available, at least. Whether people can buy it will be another story, but that there's food available in the country. So even though agriculture may not have been our biggest revenue earner, they've been providing for us, and we're now dependent on it.
Yeah, and to some extent look towards the future, because if we can maintain agriculture in safety and continue doing our exports, we will be feeding the rest of the Caribbean through all of this as well.
Yes. All right. So we hear opportunities at least.
Correct. The opportunities are there for everyone. It's hard to look at them as you're looking through this mess, but if we pay close attention, we can find opportunities.
All right.
And more often than not, I think what helps in a period like this is to be decisive and then carry out those actions immediately. Because whenever there's politics, because I mean that's the animal that we always fight with.
Yeah.
And I think if we fast track everything, I think that it helps everyone in the process.
There was a WHO official that there's a video floating around where he says, listen, moving fast is what's important. And it's moving fast in all respects.
Yeah.
Correct.
Absolutely. Any closing message before we go?
Just for everybody to stay safe and practice the protocols. I think hand washing has become quite the habit now. It's so much more than that as well. No hugging, as we were discussing before the show started. But the whole idea is that we stay safe through this mess and we take care of each other. I keep saying, and I say as much as I can, we are all in this together.
Yes.
And if we don't recognize that fact, then we're less likely to come out of this successful than if we realize, hang on, Isani, Marlene, Kimo, I've got to work with everybody to get through this to the other end. If we do that and we pull together as a people, Belize is going to be a really fantastic example of how to get through a pandemic.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in and having this conversation with us. We're going to go ahead and take our final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up, so stay tuned. And we're back. Very informative show today. And we're going to start off, of course, reminding you of the most critical issue, which is that we have officially confirmed our third case of COVID-19 in Belize. We are expecting a briefing from the Prime Minister that was noted in a press release yesterday, where he is expected to talk about new measures to minimize and prevent the spread of the disease. We want to remind you, and we will keep on reminding you, we all have a responsibility to play. Wash your hands as often as possible. I read this really great thing that said, wash your hands when you wake up, wash your hands before you eat, after you eat, when you go outside, when you touch something. And if you can't remember the last time you washed your hands, go wash your hand again. That's probably the best thing, because that's just all it is. Try not to touch your face. That's how you would be spreading the virus. Keep your social distance and stay home. What social distance means? Physical space. So if you actually have to leave your house, this is the ideal here, Isani and I, that's 6 feet. You could do 3 if needs be, but it's 3 to 6 feet. That's what you're looking at to stay away from people, to minimize the spread of the virus.
Just to kind of reiterate and plug a little bit of humor in there, just to lighten things up a bit. You have all of these memes that are floating around on social media, right? The guy goes to his potential job after COVID-19, right? And in the interview, the HR person or the interviewer is asking, there's a gap in your CV in 2020, right? So the guy responds, yeah, I was busy washing my hands. All of 2020.
I thought it was a social distancing on the CV.
No, it's just a reminder how critical and how important hand washing is and proper hygiene at this point in time. That's all.
We have to take it seriously. I actually am a big fan of some of the laughable moments. The two things, the jokes that come out, those that are appropriate, of course, and I mean like they're not insulting or making fun of anyone. And I absolutely love some of the sweet moments that we're seeing from other parts of the world as well. So there is a lot that you can pay attention to. We want to remind you, please get your information from reliable sources. So let's start off with where you can go. If you're looking for international information on the virus, studies and developments, you want to go to the World Health Organization. You want to go to the Pan American Health Organization. If you want to go regionally, you can go to the Caribbean Regional Public Health Agency, CARPHA. If you want to look at the United States specifically, you can go to the CDC, Center for Disease Control. And then, of course, when you're talking about locally, you want to go to the Government of Belize press office page. You want to go to the Ministry of Health page. And you want to go to the Office of the Director of Health Services page. And of course, the News 5 page as well, as we provide updates.
Just a reminder as well too, Marlene. Let the experts be the one to guide the conversation and the direction on an official level, right? So that we stay away from putting information out there that is inaccurate and erroneous. We want to stress that once again, because there are no checks and balances per se in the social media space. So everyone has an opinion, everyone has something to say, but not what you're saying. Not everything is accurate or factual. So you need to be mindful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can look out for all the updates on our Facebook page on News 5 Live. We'll have all the information that comes out today. We'll be live if there is a press briefing.
If there is a press conference, expect that it will be carried live on both our platforms, the social media platform and on our TV station. Right?
That's all the time we have for today. Remember, if you want to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. Drop me a line at marlene_oye@channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. Remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
Start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
And your hands clean and with physical distance from other people. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.